Three, two, one. Hey everybody, my name's Faber the Cat Girl. On this week's episode of the podcast, we are interviewing a buddy of mine by the name of Lawman. And today's podcast has a 99% chance of sarcasm in its podcast.
Yeah, I totally not trying to solicit merch here, but I thought I'd just put the shirt on for this occasion.
Honestly,
Actually,
it's a pretty good shirt.
yeah.
Uh,
So how's your
yes.
day going?
Uh, it's been going pretty darn good. Did a bunch of running around, and then I opened up one of my projects, stared at it, internally screamed into the void, said, this is a mess. People are still using this shit like 5 years later." And that's like, I don't know, for me, the biggest motivator like behind my work recently has been like a kick in the pants of all these young kids getting like into Halo and modding and even machinima. And I'm kind of like, do I really got to be the only guy who knows how to make tools, to help the community make more content? And at the end of the day, yeah, that's usually how it goes. These people doing really simple projects often don't have that fundamental, deep dive understanding. Even on Halo Machinima making, like, I've noticed a lot of machinimas even these days, people have trouble even lowering their weapons, forgetting that that was actually, a thing that was in the engine. People are just flat out removing their weapons and like going with no hands. It's like you could be also like lowering your hands as well, you know? A lot of people like there are hidden tricks and tips that we as people have worked with this engine for the better part of over a decade now. It's insane the quirks that Halo has always had. And I'm not even sure how many years have you been working with Halo yourself? For me, it's going to be a
Oh,
decade in about a month.
professionally or personally?
And
It's a mix of both.
for me professionally, I'd say since I was about 14, so that's about 9 years. But I'd
If you
say
want to say,
personally, it's like I was picked up playing Halo was since I was about 7 years old. My older sister sat me down with Halo 3. And I remember it so vividly, and it's what got me into it. Because I wasn't a gamer really then. I mean, I enjoyed tinkering, but it was she made a Juggernaut game mode where uh she was playing as an elite with a gravity hammer, chasing me down as a Spartan through Epitaph. And as like a 7-year-old kid, it's like the terror of like your little sister playing a monster chasing you down. And it's like Halo and the memories it had for me growing up, like playing Fat Kid in LAN parties. Like we had I remember I was like about 13 years old. Halo Reach had been out for 2 years. And there was an impromptu Halo Reach LAN party at a community like barbecue. And I remember it was the first time I had ever played Reach. I grew up playing Halo 3, ODST. I was like, Reach, what's Reach? And I was like, right? Because they loaded up Forge World and all of a sudden, all these map variants and everything because they had wired up, I believe it was four consoles together or something like that. And it was like we actually had a full 16-person lobby, and there was like all these box TVs that everyone fucking just logged out onto this table. And I remember vividly, I was stuck on this little like fucking TV that couldn't have been like no, it was smaller than monitors these days, and it was like this little CRT TV, and we had four players on that little tiny ass CRT TV, and there's just nothing that compares even in modern gaming to that good old fashioned you get together LAN party, sit down with your friends, you got fucking pizza. It's like something that I'm noticing like even
the Doritos
nowadays.
out.
The Doritos out, you order a pizza, even in middle school, Tommy's mom came in with the fucking tray of pizza bites and the cola. Don't stay up too late, and you'd end up staying up till like 5 a.m. trying to beat the campaign. And that kind of thing has even been lost in modern gaming, like in the chase of cosmetics. Like Reach had so much on launch, even for like that era, and none of it. You didn't have to pay for none of it. None of it was even locked behind DLC. Like that was all stuff you had to grind. And you see someone with like the flaming helmet, like inheritor rank, like that was like, damn dude, do you have a life outside of playing Reach matchmaking? And honestly, like right up until the last days before that was sunsetted, I was just blown away because like, you know, fucking there were still people in Mexico playing Die Hard every day. There was like a population of about 1,000, between like 100 and 1,000 people playing Reach every day on the 360, right up until they shut everything down. And it was surprising that people still played the old games on the 360. You know, there's still a desire. That's what kind of kind of saddens me that there is that absolute like we have the legacy and everything in the MCC, but that's a, for lack of a better term, that's a port. It's not authentically original. It's not like we boot up into that OG Halo 3 menu or ODST where when you're loading into a map you have that really cool, remember the superintendent like diagrams and how it would pop by? Yeah, where did that go? Right? Like, there's so many parts of Halo's history and legacy that's just kind of been subtly forgotten. Like, we have the dig site and everything, but people are all looking at the weapons, the levels, but nobody's looking at like the legacy of like the UI or even the different features that Bungie and even early 343 and Saber Interactive were trying to do back before, a lot of it got changed up with, for lack of a better term, in that period between Halo 4 and 5 management, because most of the people working on Halo 4 were contractors who were brought over, from various parts of Microsoft. They're like, hey, do you want to work on Halo? And they brought them on to work on Halo. Like that, there was a bit of a conflict of interest with different things and different ideas, clashes. Like it might have felt like a Call of Duty, but at its roots, it did feel like a Halo game. Like my favorite Call of Duty game is Halo 4. It's my favorite running joke. And everything like kind of after that really did feel like 343 was trying to make a different game. It's like instead of just branching out making a new IP, it's like they're trying all of these experiments and things that don't work within something that's already there.
Yeah, because the dig site thing, it's great. I mean, I tried out the Halo macro build
Oh, I
level,
haven't
and
even had a chance to try that out. How is it?
it's fun. It's native 60 FPS. Also, there's like this update you have to have because they're pushing some things with it.
Of course.
It felt very retro. My only issue is I feel like there is a lot more they can dig up. Like you said, more than weapons, more than anything else. I feel like what they should do is make a mod, a completely separate build, because you know how you load up all those mod tools.
Yep.
You're on a build of like an old build of Reach or something, for example.
Yeah, yeah, those tools are, for lack of a better term, and this is, I could even share my insight on that as a Halo preservationist, right? Someone who
Hmm.
has all of these old dev kits in my possession, and I've even like programmed the tools to open up these old builds and these old assets, and I've compared them across to what the dig site has. And, even in my own time, like I'll reach out to Ken at 343 and I'll be like, hey, like, do you happen to have any of these assets that I managed to extract out of this old build? Because they do have their own internal tools for working with everything, right? And updating, getting the assets out. That's great. That's like more than what I have. But it's a bit different when you have a third party person with their own software going and having a look at it because they might potentially be able to do something with those tools that your internal one you couldn't do without having to refactor a lot of old code from, in the early 2010s, 2000s. And that's like we're even getting cut sound. Like there's a bunch of scripts within Halo Reach right now that came with a recent update that shows cut dialogue between Kat and George when they get in the saber. Did you know that? There's supposed to be this little interaction between where Kat it wants to get in the saber with Noble Six, and Carter basically says chews her out, cuts her off, and says, "No, I need you running my ground op, George. You're with six." And then Kat just says, "But sir, I don't want to hear it." right? And then there's this entire little scene too, where right before you go up to the saber, where the Marine scans you, it's like, I have to verify biometrics, sir. And it's like the little look up down bullshit. And that was supposed to be, I guess, like included in the demo or something. It was cut, right? The little biometrics verification. And that's just right in the script right now in the mod tools. And I looked at that and I went, there's no audio files for this. Like, we don't have any of these other things that the script is wanting and referencing. And then I'm like, so I sat down last night and I opened up that old build and I was like, oh, all this cut dialogue is sitting right here. So, of course, like you can't just extract raw audio files like with a dev kit. So my tool can't. So I used a bit of a janky workaround method, right, where I back everything up into what's called an audio cache, where it makes clone MP3 of everything as it ports the files over. And the beauty of that is there's a bit of a memory limit when doing that. And um, I hit it, but I was able to look through all of this dialogue like that was supposed to be in reach, but because of like the limitations Bungie hit with the 360 console, like it's fascinating. Even like the Macworld build, where there's all sorts of plants and fauna and shit that's there, but nobody has taken the time to be like, let's let's brush this off, make an actual update to Reach. Like, why don't we add like little extra bits of wildlife into the campaign? Like, people have all this like gripes about touching the original and everything, but it's like it's a port. Like, and there's so much that has been done to the graphical side of Reach. Like, you compare it 1 to 1 to 360 and now, the lens flares, the lighting, the reflections and everything. It's a night and day. Like, it's a different engine almost now because I mean I've even looked at the code for the rendering and they've changed it from the old 32-bit power PC to actual PC. So fundamentally Halo isn't what it was, and that's why I took the time to, like reach out to machinima makers who were there in that era. I'm like, hey, do you remember this thing? And they're 90% of the time, the machinima people, out of everybody in the Halo community, remembers these niche, obscure facts that no one else does. And it's always made me smile. And the workarounds the machinima community has come up with for something that we as modders could do in like, 15 minutes, like, oh, just do a couple of tag edits. It's like, you guys will spend like, you know, 2 or 3 weeks like green screening and mocking it up in CG and source filmmaker, and that type of dedication is just something that's always blown me away and has been something admirable about the machinima side of that community. And I'm curious as to like what your opinion is and
Yeah.
everything as to Halo and how it's developed over the course of the last decade in the caretakers who are currently holding the franchise 343, right? Like
Hmm.
it's been a rough and bumpy road, but we're in the best place we've ever been, at least in terms of modding and content right now. But it was a
Hmm.
rough road to get there, and I'm curious as to what it was like for the machinima makers in that rough patch for 10 years. Because for us as
Yeah.
modders, it was brutal.
Yeah, so I've been a semi machinima director, also assistant director for about 8 or 9 years now. And the biggest thing that I've been pushing for the last few years is partner up with modders. Now,
Yeah,
I enjoyed the modding community. I've met some people there. I think it takes time to build trust with somebody. You can't just jump to somebody and say, "Do this for me,"
yeah,
because when it comes to machinima, especially when it comes to body acting, especially when it comes to forging, 9 times out of 10, it's volunteer based and it's not paid work. So
absolutely.
when you think about going to somebody and being like, "Hey, can you animate for my project?" Well, they're going to expect you to pay. They're going to expect you to do all these things. So I think we're at a point where we need to come together and actually push each other to do different things. Like the
Yeah,
other night, you mentioned to me that um, the idea of like nobody wants to take time to learn how to mod, and people just want something done instantly. Or it's like if you learn how to do it yourself with the machinima experience you have,
yeah,
you're pretty much like a god at that point, and you have more control over the project, and then you have to spend less time on green screening. and you can focus more time on world building and
Yeah.
actually going through the process of what actual animators go through, but except game engine base.
Yeah.
Halo, to me right now, yes, it is struggling a bit. Infinite struggling a little bit as we speak.
Yeah.
However, I think the biggest potential is that Halo could just become a world building tool. They
Absolutely.
can still make campaigns, they can still make custom games, they can still make multiplayer. But I feel like Halo as an engine as a whole, if it can be reworked properly, I think can be turned into something that it's just a tool like the Unreal Engine. Because I don't know what your opinion I know I'm jumping topics here, but
No,
like
no, go
what is
for
your
it. This.
opinion yeah, what is your opinion on Halo moving to Unreal instead of just trying to fix the engine they currently have?
Well, I do have a bit of insider knowledge on that. And I can't really speak too verbosely about it. It was considered, and it was eventually just ignored, as far as I know, just merely because taking the time to replicate all of those systems and all of those quirks that work within Halo would take an ungodly amount of man hours, right? And just even getting it to look the same, feel the same, the enemies act the same. Like, Unreal is great, but you also gotta, look at what you're sacrificing in the original Blam, like Forge, Theater, like all of the stuff would have to be remade by hand, and it wouldn't be one-to-one authentic like we've had it for the last 20 years. And so there was this big internal discussion that happened at 343 where they were like, we've got to take the time to sit down and fix slip space and get it into a point where it's workable in the next one or two, contracting cycles. So that way, moving forward, this can actually be a Halo game for the next 10 years where we have an engine base, like you said, a world building tool that potential future contractors could come and just make up a campaign, in that year and a half that they're contracted through 343 and Microsoft. And I found that to be quite admirable, and I do appreciate that direction that Halo is going, even with the mod tools. Like, I've even noticed some fans have gotten really creative. Like, there's an M4 mod in Halo Reach. Like, someone even ported Gordon fucking Freeman into Halo 3 on a cheap rig, and that blew me away. And then all the Covenant are like Combine soldiers. It's like, whoa, the mod tools have only been out for like 2 or 3 years, and the fans are even coming up with their own Blender tools to like do custom animations. And as someone who's like not super well versed with everything, like in every aspect of the modding pipeline, but I understand that there are ways these systems can interwork. I see the potential even for custom voice active machinimas with actual lip sync on civilian characters. People are like, oh well, that'd be a lot of work. It's like you just need to take the time to sit down with a modder who understands how to do the whole audio and lip sync process. It's just it takes some time to you know, find those connections and collaborate. And there's a lot of conflicting ideals, and because when you're making a machinima mod project like that, it's not just making a machinima. Like those maps and those worlds are living, breathing spaces. They're not just a set anymore. Like when you're collaborating like that, you're crafting your own world, your own lore, your own environments, your own story. And that, in my opinion, might take Machinima into new heights of resurgence if executed properly. Apologize, I went on a bit of a tangent there.
No, you're all good. I like passion. I like people that are passionate about projects, and you're passionate about modding. I'm passionate about modding too, but I got to learn a thing or two, and maybe I gotta whip out the monkey wrench, and you just tell me what I gotta do. But basically, I think people might be afraid of challenge, and I find that interesting because this is not me shit talking about the community, but
No, God no.
the if you think about machinima is a challenge because you're
Yeah,
working around certain barriers and certain things that you can't do. So you have to do it your own way. And you have to go through all these extra steps. Well,
Yeah.
with modding, you have extra steps, but you have more control on it. And I feel like I get people want to get a project out at a certain time, but it's not apples to oranges.
Right.
It's sometimes it's strawberry to zucchini, you know, or eggplant. I don't know what example to throw in there. Sometimes it's sweet, sometimes it's bitter.
Yeah.
But if you get the framework together and start working on something, that'd be great. Like, so I like for recently, I just watched Society's Project Awake. I was part of the forging team and creative consulting team,
Oh wow.
and for a project that grand scale, it felt very original. I have not seen original machinima before in a very long time.
Yeah, it
Um,
almost reminded me like when I was watching clips and reviewing, the script for the second act here coming up. It reminded me very much of like the old days where you had like the Running Dead and like Arby and the Chief, Red versus
but
Blue,
modernized,
but modernized, that,
retro.
that retro style, those politically satirical jokes, and some of the things like he told me, right, like that are jokes in the second act, like for me as a person who's like even gender diverse, there are little quips and jokes in there that make me go, oh, and laugh because they're very well written. They're authentic. They're in person. It's not forced. It's not corporate or cookie cutter. Like this is a passion project from the heart, and it's been a long ass time since I've seen it. Anything like this.
I love passion projects, and it's okay to be inspired by other things, but I think we could take it to the next step. Now, for one, not a lot of people have a PC.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people have the resources that they need to do modding. I'll give you an example. At Innovative Modder, from time to time, I will help out Zed Pratt with mod shots. So I would pull up a mod and I would shoot the scenes that he would need because he doesn't have the equipment that he needs to get it done.
Oh.
So, as an example like that, I think people can work together a bit more in a certain way.
Well.
I love collaboration
Mhm.
projects,
I know,
especially with
like,
Awake. I felt like a collaboration project, but in his own passion, which I loved about it.
yeah. I know, like for me, I've even had like requests for Xbox users, like, can you mod on console this and stuff, and I've like attempted it, but it's like you said, like it's the point where I'm like, you know, what do you need? Like I'll just sit down, like hash it out, like get some body actors, we'll run through your shot and get that done because there's even a lot of creative talent who are limited to just a console, but just because they're on a console does not mean that they're creative talents like aren't existing and that's like one thing where I feel, for lack of a better term, like console players have been really getting cucked in the last few years of MCC's development, like in terms of the matchmaking being broken for like 5 years. All it took was someone not wanting to play with you enough times and boom, you can't fucking matchmake even if you got good rep. It's like, who invented that system? That was a little bit dumb because we all know Xbox Live has been abused and used for the last 20 years. You know, it's
Yeah.
hindsight is 2020, as they say.
Oh yeah. Especially when it comes to that collaboration process. Yes, you're going to have annoyances.
Yep.
Yes, you're going to have creative differences. But once you break down the eggs, the butter, the sugar,
The
you be baking a
recipe.
shit ton of fucking cookies, my friend. Whether they're no baked or baked, or you're just going to eat the, but people just want to eat the cookie dough because they don't want to bake the fucking cookies.
That is a perfect analogy for that, though. And I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, it's like people going to TED Talks. Everybody wants to know the $1 million secret to getting rich quick, but nobody wants to sit there and put in like the 10 plus years of networking and research and the sitting down at the grindstone, burning the midnight hours, oil and stuff at the late hours, just to get a passion project out or get this one shot or this one thing that just needs to look right. And then it's like once you hit there, it's like, oh, okay, I can go to bed now.
Yeah. So, and sometimes the ingredients that you use may not work. Maybe you're allergic to butter.
Yeah, or allergic to
Chef
nuts.
on Scrape, throw it in there.
Yeah.
Uh, it's I don't know why I'm going with the cookie cutter aspect, but
Yeah.
it sort of works like that.
I gotta
And
get a
people just
refill on
wanted
my
to be
coffee.
handed the cook. People just want to be handed the cookie instead of just coming together to make something a banner of a cookie.
Yeah, well, it's like it takes an entire like you can't just have like a busboy in a kitchen or just like a chef in a kitchen. It
Yeah,
takes a collaboration of different people in a culinary environment. Like even if you're like a line cook, like like the hectic chaos of a kitchen with people running around left and right, food's going out, waitresses are carrying it out, the bartender's up front, mixing like a dozen drinks, you know, cooks in the back, like grilling, deep frying stuff, getting it on the plate, getting it out, and it's a team effort to run a kitchen. Just like it's a team effort to run a game studio or a film studio or to get a project together, you need those body actors, you need the cameraman, the director, the writer, and all of that needs to come together like a gumbo almost,
I
when it's like making a stew. You got to make
I
sure
gotta
all your ingredients are right, because if you use spoiled cream in your stew, it's gonna taste a little off. I
I
gotta
got a
get a
prime
coffee. Go ahead.
I got a prime example, and I was up in northern Michigan with my dad, and there was this hangout spot. I forget what it's called, but essentially, it had a bowling alley, it had a restaurant, it had a bar, it had an outdoor area for concerts, an outdoor walk space, an upstairs, a downstairs. It was just an all-in-one event place, and the place like was open for like a year. My dad and I go sit down for lunch just to see what it's like. It took forever to get our food. We ordered something simple as a salad, and it took forever. And we're sitting here just going, "Oh, this is really cool. You can grab a drink and go up and go bowl. You can grab a drink and go outside and listen to the concert and talk to somebody. Like it's a big social gathering."
Yeah.
But there are too many roles that need to be filled, and if there's no system of routine of some sort, wow, I just slammed my desk. If there's no routine, then nothing's going to work and you're going to fall flat on your face.
hmm
However, I encourage people to fall flat on their face because immediately you're going to keep getting back up and be like, well, I'm tired of having to buy fucking band aids because my face is all cut up. All right. So, you know what? I'm going to keep getting up. I'm not going to, no matter how many times you trip, it's going to work out in some shape or fashion. And sometimes, like with me, like when I make a machinima, like Despair, that came out like 5 years ago. And to this day, I go back and look at it and be like, wow, I could have done that better. And then yes, it is self-negative talk, but that self-negative talk
I wouldn't even call it
pushes.
being self-negative. I would call it like constructive self-criticism, where
Yep.
you're not necessarily doubting yourself, but you're taking an honest, critical look at your own work so you can
Mhm.
objectively look at it without bias.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I love about it because like it pushes you to do more. And lately I've gotten busier. I'm nearly fresh out of college. I'm trying to get into like the professional industry right now, and the biggest drawback is having time. So what I've been doing, I've just been helping people out because they have a lot of passion projects, and Wake was one of them. I signed on board because I thought the story was really unique. It definitely gave me RB and the Chief vibes, but in a very political
Yeah, for me,
aspect.
I was almost brought on to work on the first season, but when I read the first draft of it, I was like, whoa, I don't know if this is going to work, right? And that's the thing. It was a bold step, but it was executed so fucking well. Like, it did give me RB and the Chief vibes. Like, and the thing is, it's not like political shock and awe. It's no, this is actual satire in an old school, like Dave Chappelle kind of comedic way, and it's
Hmm.
very well put together. And That's where it's like I've been talking with him, and I'm like, bring me on for season two. Let's get some funky shit going. Let's get some sliding doors. And that's where even modders can come in and create simple one-off assets that, machinima makers can use, like buttons, doors, like drivable vehicles, forklifts, like different stupid stuff that, a modder looks like, oh, that's dumb. I could do that in like 10 minutes. Who would want to use that? It's not useful. It's not like, big shiny explosion or clickbait
It
YouTube
is pretty
video.
fucking useful because nobody wants to stare at a stationary door in Forge World. People want the mechanics. They like a door opening is very cinematic
Yeah.
because you're gonna be like, what the hell is on the other side?
Well,
Now
yeah.
people could green screen a door, but I don't want to see the same damn door being green screen being opened from freaking
Yeah.
stock footage
Yeah.
every damn time I see a machine. I don't want to see the same shit.
No,
I
no,
want to
and
see something authentic that's built in the game.
that's where I've really been taking a big step towards, like, reaching out to people like you and society and the machinima community. And, for me, I lost a lot of my passion modding projects because, you work on so many tiny, small things and so many maps and different things. And the biggest drawback is you want people to enjoy and to play your art and to do that. And nobody like wants to get like the really harsh criticisms of it and everything, but nobody takes a look at the saying like, hey, instead of like looking at something that's like, a million people are going to play it because it's like a beautiful sandbox, big battles, da da da, why not just make something that is stupid simple, like a machinima object bundle, it's like, hey, even if you're not releasing like a preset map for people to download, just creating those tags and putting those assets on Nexus, you know, doing that and just contributing a little bit of work allows potentially hundreds of thousands of people to take that and put their own spin on it. That simple forklift could be like a million other forklifts once it's in Halo 3 and it's drivable. People have a base to look at and say, oh, that's how it works because people want to take shit apart. They want to figure it out. And that's what drives innovation, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's like part of like why I'm like, nobody wants to stare at the same fucking green screen door and see it open and close 1,000 times. Like, oh, I'll just sit down and, hammer out like in 2 hours like 100 different door models that open and close and hiss and everything and to a machinima maker. That's gold. They look at that, I look at it, I see 100 doors. A machinima maker looks at it and says, I've got 100 different set piece transitions or, different ways of doing it. Like I can have characters drop out. And me as a modder, I would have never thought of that. The potential applications of a simple fucking object, you know? And I've been kind of ranting about that, so I'll let you
Oh, you're good.
potentially speak on the potential implications of how mods can affect machinima and how we could potentially be even improving stuff that exists now.
Yeah. And I really think that at some point, like it's happening now. People are slowly getting stale with the Halos they're playing now
Hmm.
because they want to see something different. We've been seeing the same damn maps for 20 plus years,
Yeah.
and I'll admit they're absolutely astonishing. We've gone outside the maps, we've explored a little, but man, it's the same damn shit. And I get it. Like it would get stale after a while.
Hmm.
And then people are like, well, Halo Infinite is coming out. Let's see what happens. And what happened, unfortunately. And I think we're now in a really good stage, I would say, in terms of pushing ourselves to do something different, thinking outside the box, challenging ourselves to go back to the older Halo titles and say, you know what, these games are still great, but there's these tools to
Yeah.
where you can manipulate and
Yeah.
do all these type of things
It's for me.
that you couldn't do before.
I've been really banging my head against it for the last 2 years of the tools being out, where you look at the different versions of the Halo engine and what they're capable of, and the different quirks and mechanics of each of them, and for me, I look at Reach as the, for lack of a better term, this is my own opinion. This is an opinion. Don't attack me for it. Everyone's got one. But Reach has always been the gold standard of Halo, even if I don't necessarily have that understanding of it as much as I would say ODST or Halo 3, because they're more simplified versions of the same Halo generation, right? Because in the modern community, we classify the different Halo games by generation because there are commonalities between different versions of the Halo engine. And I noticed that even with machinima makers, that the generation of Halo engine that you folks have tended to stick to throughout the years most consistently has been the third generation. I do see machinimas made, custom edition, Halo 1, occasionally Halo 2, though that's been a few years, Halo 5 and 4 and whatnot. But the third generation between 3, ODST, and Reach, you could arguably say it was the golden age of machinimas and of that engine, you know. I've been banging my head against a rock trying to get New Mombasa in Halo Reach for 3 years, but when it's in there, the potential for you know machinimas, Reach machinimas of running through a rainy city at night. I look at that and I say that's just cinematic to fucking play, period, or like forward to do shit. But I also look at it and say I know for a fact that a million machinimas are going to be made of just being able to walk through New Mombasa and open the doors and see the fire because I know how to make all of this. And it's not just going to be, oh, this is a generic ass map that it was just ported and plopped in. Like, I know the systems and I know it's going to take a long time. Just like, in my opinion, how the dig site is and everything. Everybody, again, is looping back to wants shit now instantly without looking at the sheer amount of time it takes to get shit done, you know?
Yeah, things take a lot of time, but through that time, you learn a lot more things. And if you just stay consistent at it,
Hmm.
you'll get something out that you're proud of. Because nobody wants to keep rushing projects and then they're not really pushing out their best selves in that project.
And that's
Um,
honestly the block that I hit for arguably the last 2 years until I changed even just my own perspective and the way I was looking at how I was doing work because I was just such a fucking perfectionist, right? And arguably, I think that's the biggest crux of any artist or creative type is I don't. It could be better. It could be better. But I mean, the beauty of having deadlines and like a project to get out is when it's done and it's out, it's done. Like an artist will deliberate and work on the same shit for a decade. I know because I've done it.
yeah, like there's movies out there today that take forever. I mean, of course, you got Disney with all their money and they're popping out a shit ton of fucking
Mhm.
things. But when people actually spend time on something that they're passionate about, the better off it's going to be. Now, of course, like you run into writer's block. You also run into a series of events where it's like you write something 5 years ago and you just put it away. You don't look at it. And you come back and you look at it 5 years later, like I did. I'm like, okay, the concept's really cool, but oh my gosh, this script is fucking terrible. So you go back and you freshen it up and you're more passionate about it because
Mhm.
it's like you get this kick of nostalgia of like,
Yeah.
wow, this is my past. This is a story that I wanted in my head, but because I've learned so much about the writing aspect, I've learned so much about other different things, I am now more confident in my abilities to make something that people might enjoy.
Honestly, and right on that topic, that was exactly like what it was like for me. I took some time, and for those of you who don't know, Halo Online was this really niche, free-to-play Halo game that was for a number of months, being produced by Saber Interactive out of St. Petersburg, Russia. It was supposed to be a free-to-play Halo game that anybody could just pick up, play, earn credits, cosmetics, all of that. And for lack of a better term, it was almost like a dry run for Halo Infinite and what would come of it. Um, and with that, it was almost like the precursor to, the MCC on PC. Um, and the one benefit that the Alderito mod and everything had was it was a way of not just like porting or like emulating the old games like through an Unreal menu. Like you could load up the old 360 menus. They were functional. You could put in a server browser. Like, and I put a bunch of that code away that I researched over the last 5 years. And of course, back then, I was nowhere near as good of a programmer as I am now. Like, I had almost zero understanding of C, C sharp and everything. And we did a bunch of research, and my partner, before he, deleted himself off the internet and retired, Mountain Dew was a fucking legend. Um, but he left so many breadcrumbs for me before he retired of different stuff we were researching at different points. And I can look back through our messages in our server that's like, archived, and our DMs, which I have archived as well. And it's like, oh shit. Like, it's notes from the past of people that I can't talk to anymore, but he found out this one thing that I didn't know. But like years later, I'm going back, I'm like, still taking me to school. Like he was my mentor, right? And he taught me like arguably most of like what I know about how this engine works. And that's where I'm very proud of like I've always tried to mentor people and like take people under my wing and pass on knowledge because you as an individual only have so much that you can grasp. And if you're years into it, you're going to form bad habits and to get comfortable with what you know and is successful for you. A great example of this is you look at Ruby of Blue. Great content, great, amazing balance. But Ruby of Blue is primarily focused on that balancing. They're not sitting there making, a four-rudder dreadnought appear at a slip space in the middle of fucking nowhere. You know, that's their niche. That's what they're comfortable with. And for me, I ended up, taking, I'm not sure if you've heard of the Halo 3 Combat Evolved project by Kashira. It's a remake of, I believe it's like, not the Silent Cartographer, but it's the Night Mission. Um,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yep.
and that's all done in ODST's engine. And I
Yeah,
ended,
I played that mod the other
yeah,
day.
yeah, I ended up, when she first got into modding, I was one of her mentors. I took all the knowledge that Mountain Dew taught me, right, and to other people, and I distilled that down into the best potential lessons that I could ever give. And within a matter of months, she fucking dwarfed my talents. I mean, the quality of her work is evident. You could boot up the mod and play it on the workshop and be like, holy shit, like 343, take notes. And that little feeling of pride like you get when it's like I helped that person overcome different challenges and kept them motivated to do something they were passionate about and to see the end result of it is that little bit of a confidence boost that as a mentor I feel is like always needed. And the impact that mentors have had on me and me as a mentor on other people, I think is something that isn't necessarily recognized enough in the machinima or the Halo community of these really
Or even
experienced,
outside.
yeah, like people just taking other people who have that innate talent and taking them under their wing and imparting the lessons, the trials, the tribulations, the blood, sweat, and tears of years of knowledge and distill that down into lessons that are easy to pick up and learn. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I can't figure this out. It's like, I spent like 4 years banging my head against a rock. Here's an easy way of doing it. And you just save that person hundreds of man hours of learning it themselves.
You're
And,
passing the torch.
it's Halo is fundamentally a game of nothing but purely tribal knowledge. Bungie even acknowledged that, you know.
I've learned so much just messing around with Halo, messing around with machinimas,
Yeah.
even in an outsider's aspect.
Oh,
Like me getting
absolutely.
involved in machinima community has made me more sociable,
Yeah.
pick up on social cues, how to network, which now I can use in a professional setting.
Yeah.
Like it's grown me as an individual. Like
Yeah.
I don't. It sounds like a fucking movie speech. Let it be.
Oh,
Like,
boo-hoo to anybody who
put on that like
disagrees, you know.
roy-
But
royalty
as
free fucking music or whatever.
yeah, but like
Uh,
as an autistic individual, like I agree, like Halo, without it and the social sphere that it created in that perfect time and era it did, I probably would not have made the friends I made or have learned
oh yeah.
programming or game design because I mean, it might sound cheesy, right? But prior to me getting into modding and everything, between the ages of like 7 and 14, I spent thousands of fucking hours making maps, making map variants that would never be published to Xbox Live,
Hmm.
but they just sit like I load them up in my cloud storage now, you know. I load them up, I take the old 360 games, put them in my Xbox One, and I look at it, I'm like, fuck, this is a good map concept. I made this when I was a kid, and it's like as a developer, it's like I look at the layout and everything, and I actually like write it down
Yeah.
properly, draft it out, and you know, it's important not to lose that. It's important to harness nostalgia, but to
Mhm.
not also have rosy-eyed tinted glasses, and to look at the lessons and iterations of what we're doing now, and look at how we can improve previous work. It's not just a matter of innovating, creating a new thing and like reinventing the past. We shouldn't be doing that. If we can like look at things that were very successful and worked, there's like a big hype for remasters or remakes and everything, but nobody actually looks at like the old Reach engine and like, hey, like what if we actually just went into the code and removed all the fucking caps for the memory limitations and just went fucking nuts, with filling the levels with life and everything? Because we have the PCs that are capable of dealing with 100 gig downloads, loading up Caldera on Warzone, you know, all of that at once. You could potentially have an entire Halo game made in a Halo engine, without going the full slip space route of having to gut and remake everything. You just like 343 could even be going the route that forgive me for going on this tangent, but Arma and Bohemia Interactive have been really, really great with this. They've been working and pouring their blood, sweat, tears into, Arma, Reforger, and DayZ, right? But Arma 3 is still having DLCs come out to this day. Like, there's going to be one coming out. I think it's come out or it's going to be coming out. It's a World War II DLC. And these are being made by the community. They're called CDLCs, community DLCs, where, the community team who makes it gets a 10% kickback of the DLC profits, and the rest of that goes to Bohemia. In turn, it's a good, healthy relationship for the community can vote on actual content.
You're keeping engagement
Yeah,
into a game that may be dead to an industry, but
yeah.
alive to a fucking community.
Well, you look at how
We
many.
are the heart of Halo.
Yeah,
If you think about it, like 343 is getting a lot of shit,
yeah,
but there's still a lot of us around.
yeah. That have stuck by it like throughout the years just because of our fucking passion
I do
for
have
this
to
franchise.
apologize. I do have to roll out, but I'd definitely like to do a part two of you.
Oh yeah, we're already hitting the 50-minute mark, so we're already at our time slot for this episode. But yeah, let's definitely do part two and, continue the conversation about
Yeah, no, I
just,
love this creative deepness. I
yeah,
I love like how ingrained this is. And one thing I want to end off is like I've been friends with this group friend of mine for about 8 or so years. And I just met them in person for a second time, and I went to my friend's wedding, and like we all hanged out in person, and the one moment that I had to myself was like, I would have met you guys if it wasn't for fucking Halo.
I know, right? Also,
Because I
by the
don't have the
way,
same feeling with Call of Duty or any other game.
you're invited to my wedding, by the way.
Oh shit.
Yeah,
Wow.
another Halo wedding. There we go.
There you go.
Because I've been a member before we end here, yet we're running at our 50-minute mark. But for the part two, I will end on a note saying that I'm putting out an open invitation to all the members of the 405th cosplaying brigade, because I've been a member of the 405th, like, cosplay and everything for the last 7 years, right? And it's like, I've been there longer than some of the management. And so it's like, I want to surprise the fuck out of my wife with just being like these bunch of Halo nerds showing up in Mjolnir and Spartan and Marine armor, and you know that's the passion this community has, and I love it. I love it so much, and that's why, despite everything over the last decade, I've stuck with it. And I think more collaboration, more community is needed. And we'll continue this conversation on part two. It's been a tremendous honor to have you on the show, Lawman.
Hey,
And
honored to be here.
yeah, I can't wait to follow up for the next interview. So
Awesome.
I absolutely appreciate it. You
Thank you
take care.
guys.
Take care, everybody.
Peace out, guys.